The next topic is the peripheral nervous system. As you see, the peripheral nervous system links the central nervous system to the rest of the nervous system. The peripheral nervous system includes all the neural structures outside the central nervous system. That would include sensory receptors, sensory nerves, sensory ganglia, and efferent motor nerves. First, let's look at receptors. There's different types of receptors. These are classified by stimulus type. There's mechanoreceptors, which respond to a mechanical force. These would be sensors that allow you to feel touch, pressure, vibration, and stretch, for example. There's thermoreceptors, which respond to changes in temperature. There are photoreceptors, which respond to light energy. This is the kind of receptors seen in the retina, for example. There's chemoreceptors that respond to chemical processes like smell and taste. And nociceptors are responding to pain stimuli. This would be extreme heat or extreme cold, excessive pressure, or inflammatory chemicals. A nociceptor would be a receptor that causes pain. By location, sensory receptors can be divided into exoreceptors, interoceptors, and proprioceptors. Exoreceptors are receptors that are sensitive to stimuli that arise outside the body. This includes touch, pressure, pain, temperature, the special senses like vision and hearing. Interoceptors are stimuli or receptors that are sensitive to stimuli arising within the body, such as awareness of tissue stretches, temperature, body chemistry changes. Proprioceptors are receptors that are found within the skeletal muscles, joints, and ligaments, and they provide spatial awareness of our limbs and appendages. Those are sensors that let you know where your arm is or your hand is in time and space without you having to look at it. So you know if you close your eyes and touch your finger to your nose without looking, that's the proprioceptors allow you to do that. Receptors can be divided into general and special senses. The general senses are the majority of sensory receptors to the body, and the special senses are things like hearing, vision, equilibrium, smell, and taste. The somatosensory system is the part of the sensory system that serves the body, wall, and the limbs. Inputs are received through exoreceptors, proprioceptors, and interoceptors, and are relayed towards the head. There are 3 neurons. It takes 3 neurons to go from the sensory receptor to the brain. The first order sensory neurons start at the receptor that may be in the skin of the finger, for example. The cell body of that first order neuron is in the dorsal root ganglia near the spinal cord. Impulses are conducted from the receptor up to the spinal cord level, where they then are transferred to the secondary sensory nerve neurons that are located in the thalamus. Third order sensory neurons go from the thalamus to the somatosensory cortex. So with 3 neurons, you can get from the sensory receptor all the way up to the somatosensory cortex. Visceral pain is pain from stimulation of visceral organ receptors. Visceral pain is generally aching pain. It's vague. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where the pain is. It's kind of a generalized pain. It's a gnawing, burning pain. It's hard to localize. Referred pain is pain from one body region that's perceived in a different body region. A classic example of this type of pain is someone having a heart attack and complaining of jaw pain or pain down the left arm. Another example is somebody with gallbladder problems may often feel pain in the right shoulder region. Let's look at the nerves. Now, we've seen this picture before when we talked about the spinal cord. This is a cross-section of the spinal cord here. You remember the posterior part of the spinal cord was the sensory nerves and tracts, and the anterior portion are the motor nerves and tracts. So here we have 2 roots. We have a dorsal root and a ventral root. The dorsal root is a sensory only. This provides sensory information going into the spinal cord. This is the dorsal root ganglia, and here this swollen area. Inside is the cell body to this first order neuron. This is a unipolar neuron, which has one process that splits into a T intersection. One process goes all the way down to the sensory receptor Other process goes up into the spinal cord through the dorsal root, and it may synapse on an inner neuron, or it may go up and down levels. It may go up as high as to the thalamus. But this is the sensory nerve root, or the dorsal root. And then the motor nerve comes out the ventral root. So this segment here is a motor only nerve. This segment here is a sensory only nerve, but they combine to form a spinal nerve, which is a mixed nerve. It is mixed. It has both motor and sensory nerves. Remember, sensory nerve fibers are afferent fibers. Motor nerve fibers are efferent fibers. The cranial nerves are peripheral nerves that come from within inside the cranium. There are 12 cranial nerves, and they're numbered by Roman numerals. And we'll look at each one of those. You'll need to know what each of the cranial nerves do and the names of the nerves. First is the olfactory nerve, cranial nerve number 1. This is a sense of smell. Something smells like an olfactory. This is cranial nerve number 1, sense of smell. Cranial nerve number 2 is optic nerve. That's a nerve for sense of vision. Optic nerve comes from the retina and goes back to the area around the sphenoid cavity. There's probably a sphenoid bone where they have the optic chiasm where the nerves cross. These nerve fibers here go back to the left occipital lobe. These nerve fibers go back to the right occipital lobe. But where they cross is right near the pituitary gland. A pituitary tumor, for example, would be swollen in this area and could cause compression on the optic nerve and can cause vision problems. The oculomotor nerve is cranial nerve number 3. There are 6 muscles that control the movement of the eyes. There's a lateral rectus and a medial rectus, which turn the eye left and which abduct and adduct the eye. There's a superior rectus and inferior rectus, which lifts the eye up and eyeball up, and inferior rectus, which lowers the eyeball down. There's a superior oblique and inferior oblique, which rotates the eye as well as reorients the eye looking up or down. The oculomotor nerve innervates all of the extraocular muscles except for the lateral rectus and the superior oblique. All the other extraocular muscles are innervated by the oculomotor nerve. The trochlear nerve is cranial nerve number 4. It innervates the superior oblique muscle of the eye. This muscle rotates the eyeball medially and depresses the eyeball when the head turns. That's the superior oblique muscle innervated by the trochlear nerve. The trigeminal nerve is cranial nerve number 5. This supplies sensation to the face as well as motor control to the muscles of chewing, muscles of mastication. This would be the temporalis muscle, the master muscle. The abducens nerve is cranial nerve number 6. This innervates the other remaining extraocular muscle, the lateral rectus muscle. Its function is to turn the eyeball laterally. It's kind of like abduction, to move laterally, so abduction, and this is the abducens nerve. So abduction and abduction sound similar. Cranial nerve number 7, the facial nerve, innervates the muscle of facial expression. It provides sensory feedback from taste from the tongue. So this is a mixed nerve. Both motor and sensory nerve fibers are in this facial nerve. The vestibulocochlear nerve is the nerve for hearing and equilibrium. This is cranial nerve number 8. Cranial nerve number 9 is the glossopharyngeal nerve. This provides sensation and motor function to the throat and tongue and pharynx. When the doctor asks you to open your mouth, say ah, he looks at your uvula. This is what he's testing, the glossopharyngeal nerve. Cranial nerve number 10 is the vagus nerve. Vagus means wanderer, and this nerve wanders throughout the body. It's primarily an autonomic nerve, has a lot of parasympathetic motor nerve fibers in it, but it carries parasympathetic innervation throughout most of the abdominal viscera, heart, and lungs. The cranial nerve number 11, the accessory nerve, or the spinal accessory nerve. This nerve is unique among the cranial nerves in that it actually comes from the upper spinal cord. The nucleus of this nerve is in the upper spinal cord, but then it goes up into the brain area and it exits the spinal canal. So the nucleus of this nerve actually is in the cervical spine, but the fibers go up in the foramen magnum into the cranial portion, and then the nerve actually exits the cranial cavity as opposed to the cervical region. So it's technically a cervical nerve, but it's called cranial nerve because it comes from the cranium. This nerve innervates the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscles. Cranial nerve number 12, the hypoglossal nerve, innervates the intrinsic and extrinsic muscles of the tongue. And we talked about cranial nerves. Next, we'll talk about spinal nerves. There's 31 pairs of spinal nerves, 8 cervical spinal nerves, 12 thoracic spinal nerves, 5 lumbar spinal nerves, 5 sacral spinal nerves, 1 coccygeal spinal nerve. We've seen this picture before. There's ventral roots and dorsal roots. Dorsal roots contain sensory fibers. Ventral roots contain motor fibers. They combine to form a spinal nerve, which contains mixed fibers. From the spinal, as the spinal nerve exits, this is all within the vertebral canal. But the spinal nerve exits between the intervertebral foramen, which is the foramen in between the vertebrae. It exits, it becomes a spinal nerve. And notice that once it exits, it branches off into a posterior branch and an anterior branch. The posterior branch is called the posterior ramus. Here you have the posterior ramus and the anterior ramus. The posterior ramus goes to the back and it innervates the muscles of the back of the erector spinae muscles and also innervates the skin of the back. Whereas the anterior ramus innervates the skin and the muscles of the trunk and of the upper and lower limbs. Now, there's 8 spinal nerves, but yet there's 7 spinal vertebrae. The way the spinal nerves come out is the first 7 spinal nerves exit above the vertebral body of the same name. For example, the C2 spinal nerve comes out above the C2 vertebral body. And C3 comes out above the C3 vertebral body. But C7 comes out inferior. C7 nerve root comes out inferior. From the C8 nerve root comes out inferior to C7. So C7 vertebra, if you look at C7 vertebra, the nerve that comes out above it is C7, the nerve that comes out below it is C8. And from there on down below, the nerves come out below the vertebral body of the same name. So the T1 spinal nerve comes out below the T1 vertebral body. So these spinal nerves come out of the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar region. In the cervical region and in the brachial region, lumbar sacral region, these nerves, spinal nerves, join together to form plexuses. Plexuses are interlacing nerve networks, whereas the thoracic spinal nerves do not form plexuses. They just come out and become intercostal nerves, and they don't join with other nerves. They just supply the muscle and skin in their segments. Let's look at the different plexuses. The cervical plexus. The major nerve of the cervical plexus, or the nerve that you need to remember from cervical plexus, is the phrenic nerve. That comes from C3, C4, and C5. That means C3, C4, C5 spinal nerves form together to form the phrenic nerve. Remember, C3, 4, 5 keeps you alive. The phrenic nerve innervates the diaphragm, and this is what lets you breathe. Here's how the spinal nerves come out of the spinal cord. You have the dorsal root, the ventral root. They combine to form a spinal nerve. Spinal nerve first has a branch that exits the posterior ramus. It turns around and innervates the muscles and skin of the back, while the anterior ramus goes anteriorly and either goes down the arm or in the thoracic area, goes to the intercostal, goes between the ribs and supplies the muscles and the skin between the ribs. In the leg, this nerve will go down to the lower extremities. Here we have the brachial plexus. The brachial plexus is made up of a combination of C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. Those five nerve roots combine and form the brachial plexus. Out of the brachial plexus comes the nerves that innervate the upper extremities: the axillary nerve, the musculocutaneous nerve, the radial nerve, the median nerve, and the ulnar nerve. If you have an injury to the right brachial plexus, it would only affect the muscles of the right arm. It does not affect the opposite side. These are the nerves, major nerves of the upper extremity. There's the radial nerve, the musculocutaneous nerve, the ulnar nerve, the median nerve, and the axillary nerve. Now, there's a way to remember the muscles that these nerves innervate. The axillary nerve innervates the deltoid and the teres minor, those two muscles only. The musculocutaneous nerve innervates all three of the muscles in the anterior brachium. So that would be the coracobrachialis, the brachialis, and the biceps muscle. All three of those are innervated by the musculocutaneous nerve. The median nerve innervates almost all of the nerves of the anterior forearm. There's two exceptions that are not innervated by the median nerve, and that is the flexor carpi ulnaris and half of the flexor digitorum profundus. Those are innervated by the ulnar nerve, but all the other muscles of the anterior forearm are innervated by the median nerve. That means the peroneal teres innervated by the median nerve, the flexor carpi radialis innervated by the median nerve, the plantaris, the palmaris longus is innervated by the median nerve, the flexor pollicis longus is innervated by the median nerve. All the other anterior forearm muscles are innervated by the median nerve except for the flexor carpi ulnaris and half the flexor digitorum profundus, which is innervated by the ulnar nerve. So the ulnar nerve then innervates those two muscles in the forearm, but most of the muscles of the hand are innervated by the ulnar nerve. The exception in the hand are the muscles of the thenar eminence. That's the muscles around the thumb. Those are innervated by the median nerve. Now the radial nerve is the easiest one to remember. The radial nerve innervates all the nerves of the extensor arm and forearm. So that would include the triceps, the brachioradialis, the extensor indicis, the extensor digitorum. All the extensor muscles of the arm and forearm are innervated by the radial nerve. This shows the sensory distribution of the nerves. The ulnar nerve is the nerve you hit when you hit your funny bone, and that nerve supplies the little finger and half of the ring finger. You see here on this diagram here. This next shows it better here. Ulnar nerve is shown in green, ulnar nerve distribution in green. Next time you bump your elbow on the table and you feel the funny bone, you're aware of the numbness in the little finger, but also pay attention to the ring finger. It should be numb only on half of the ring finger. The half of the ring finger by the little finger should be numb only. The other half of the ring finger should have normal sensation. The lumbar plexus comes from L1 to L2, L3, and L4. Innervates most of the thigh. There's two main nerves. There's two nerves that come from the lumbar plexus that are important: the femoral nerve and the obturator nerve. The femoral nerve innervates the anterior thigh muscles. That'd be the quadriceps, the sartorius, pectineus muscle, all the anterior thigh muscles. The obturator nerve passes through the obturator foramen and innervates the hip adductor muscles like the gracilis, the adductor magnus, adductor longus, all those adductor hip adductor muscles are innervated by the obturator nerve. Diagram cartoon of the lumbar plexus. The sacral plexus comes from L4 through S1. It's the longest and thickest. It forms a sciatic nerve, which is the longest and thickest nerve of the body. The sciatic nerve is actually two nerves combined into one nerve. The two nerves are the tibial and the common fibular nerve. They join together to form the sciatic nerve. But they're actually can be thought of as two different nerves that are just joined together. The sciatic nerve innervates all the hamstring muscles. The tibial portion of the sciatic nerve innervates the semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and the biceps femoris long head, whereas the deep perineal portion of the sciatic nerve innervates the biceps femoris short head. And below the knee, the sciatic nerve splits and actually becomes the tibial nerve and the fibular nerve. The tibial nerve the tibial nerve goes down the back of the leg and innervates the calf muscles, the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle, whereas the common fibular nerve innervates the muscle in the lateral leg, like the tibia, like the peroneus longus. I was drawing a blank there. Like the peroneus longus is innervated by the common fibular nerve. A dermatome is an area of skin supplied by the sensory branches of a single spinal nerve. And if you map out the dermatomes over the body, you'll get a picture like this. This represents the dermatome. So what this means is let's say we'll take this dermatome here, T10. The nerves from T10, spinal nerve, innervate this area of the skin, which happens to be around the umbilical region. The T4 is around the nipple region. That innervates the T4 spinal nerve innervates the sensory areas around the nipple line. In the upper extremity, we have the nerves of the brachial plexus representing C5, C6, C7, T8, and T1. So each spinal nerve has a certain location on the body that it innervates that area of skin. These are called dermatomes.